Everyone, it's Rabbi Dr. Jack Cohen. Thank you for joining me for part 3 of the 5 love languages. So far, we've done a really nice job in understanding how the concept works. Last week we worked on the love language of words of affirmation. This week we're going to talk about the love language of quality time. What it means to certain couples, certain individuals need to have certain quality time. We'll explain it, we'll flush out the whole concept. Again, before we start tonight, I want to encourage everyone out there who's in Shidduchim, who knows someone in Shidduchim, to please put up your resume on Shidduch Profiles Plus, or it used to be called Partners in Shidduchim, a great platform. It's vetted. You need to write a little blurb about yourself. If you need help, feel free to reach out to me at 305-206-1916. I'll help you write it up. If you need any help in terms of your dating relationship that you're in right now, or you need to put together a top 10 list, you need to get matched up, or have a marital question or a marital issue, or shalom bayis matter you would like to bring to my attention, just write me a WhatsApp at 305-206-1916. If you need a copy of the PDF of questions to ask on dating, same story, 305-206-1916, or write me an email to drjackcohen18@gmail.com. So moving forward, what's about quality time? So Dr. Chapman writes about a certain person named Mark and his wife, Andrea. And Andrea complained, Mark doesn't spend any time with me. What good are all the things that he gives me if we don't enjoy them together? What was Andrea's desire? Quality time with Mark. That's what it was. She wanted his attention. She wanted him to focus on her, to give her time, to do things with her. By quality time, we mean giving someone your undivided attention. And we live in the world of iPods and iPads and devices and the worst of all, the worst culprit, cell phones. And what a challenge it is. As a matter of fact, I had a shalom bayis case last week where the guy was so addicted to his phone that minutes before Shabbos, he's still on the phone when there's a 3-year-old boy and a 2-year-old boy that still have to be showered, and the wife is very much upset with him. So we have to be careful. By quality time, we mean giving someone your undivided attention. We don't mean sitting on the couch watching TV together. What we mean is sitting on the couch with the TV off, looking at each other and talking to each other. Devices put away, giving each other your undivided attention. It means taking a walk, just the two of you, going out to eat together, looking at each other and talking with good eye contact. Time, as we know today in our very busy world, is a precious commodity. We all have multiple demands on our time. Everyone wants us. Everyone's tugging at our jackets and our clothing. But each one of us has the same exact amount of hours in a day. As we know, human beings can only have a finite amount of 24 hours in their day. We can make the most of those hours by committing some of those hours to our spouse. If your mate's primary love language is quality time, she or he simply wants you being with her, spending time together. And it's got to be the right kind of time, which we'll get into and flush it out. Have you ever noticed that in a restaurant, you can almost always tell the difference between a dating couple and a married couple? Yes. You could tell the difference between a dating couple and a married couple. And what is that difference? Dating couples look at each other and talk. Married couples, unfortunately or sadly, sit there and gaze around the restaurant. You'd think they were there to eat. So when I sit with my wife and I give her 20 minutes of my undivided attention, and she does the same for me, we're giving each other 20 minutes of life. As the Chafetz Chaim used to say, time is life. We will never have those 20 minutes back ever again. We're giving our lives to each other. It's a powerful emotional communicator of love. Quality time where there's unrestricted attention to the spouse. One medicine cannot cure all diseases. In our advice to Andrea and Mark, I made a serious mistake. I assumed that words of affirmation would mean as much to her as they would mean to him. I had hoped that each of them would give adequate verbal affirmation, the emotional climate would change, and both of them would begin to feel loved. It worked for Mark. Why? Because Mark's primary love language was words of affirmation. It did not work for Andrea. Mark began to feel more positive about Andrea, sensing her genuine appreciation for his hard work, but didn't work well for Andrea because words of affirmation was not Andrea's primary love language. Her language was quality time. She was dying for Mark to spend more quality time with her. So I called Mark, who told me Andrea was still not happy. I think I know why, I said. The problem is, I suggested the wrong love language to Andrea. I gave you both a prescription of words of affirmation, and I made a mistake that it works good for Mark, but it doesn't work for Andrea. Mark didn't have the foggiest idea what I meant. I explained that what makes one person feel loved emotionally is not always the same thing that makes the other person feel loved emotionally. Mark agreed that his language was words of affirmation. Mark told me how much that had meant to him as a boy and how good he felt when his wife expressed appreciation for the things he did for her. I explained that Andrea's language was not words of affirmation, but quality time. Andrea was seeking quality time with Mark. I explained the concept of giving someone your undivided attention, not talking to her while you watch the news or sports or reading texts, but looking into her eyes, giving her your full attention, doing something with her that she enjoys doing and doing it wholeheartedly, such as bowling together, playing Scrabble together, whatever it may be. Like going to the symphony with her, he said. I could tell the lights were coming on. Dr. Chapman, that's what she's always been complaining about. I didn't do things with her. I didn't spend time with her. That's how she constantly complains. We used to go places and do things before we were married, but now we're just too busy. And that's her love language, all right? You got it, Dr. Chapman. But what am I going to do? My job is so demanding. How will I cut the time out and give it to Andrea? For the next 10 minutes, Mark gave me the history of his climb up the corporate ladder, of how hard he had worked, and how proud he was of his accomplishments. Mark told me of his dreams for the future, and that he knew that within the next 5 years he would be where he wanted to be in his aspirations in terms of professional career. Do you want me to be there alone? Rather, do you want to be there alone, or do you want to be there with Andrea and the children? I asked them. Well, I want to be with Andrea and the kids. I want to enjoy it together. That's why it always hurts so much when she criticizes me for spending time on the job. I'm doing this for her. I'm doing this for all of us. I wanted her to be part of it, but she's so negative about the time that I spend at work. Are you beginning to see why she's so negative, Mark? I asked. Her love language is quality time, and she's seeking it desperately. You've given her so little quality time that her love tank is empty. As you may remember, in the first episode, we spoke about a concept called an emotional love tank. We all have an emotional love tank that needs to be filled. And when it's filled, we feel satiated, we feel fulfilled. Andrea doesn't feel secure in your love. Therefore, she's lashed out at what she feels is what she's being deprived of, which is quality time. She doesn't like your job because she views your job as the enemy. She doesn't really hate your job. She hates the fact that she feels so little love coming from you. There's only one answer, Mark, and that is costly. You have to make time for Andrea. You have to love her in her love language, which is quality time. Where do I begin, Dr. Chapman? I asked Mark if he had his legal pad handy. It's right here, he said. Good. We're going to make another list. What are some things that you know Andrea would like to do with you? Things she has mentioned through the years. And here was Mark's list. Andrea loves to spend weekends in the mountains. She loves to meet Mark for lunch. And Mark said, when I come home at night, sit down and talk with her about my day and listen, she tells me about her day. She loves to spend time talking with the children about their school experiences. And she loves to spend time playing games with the kids. She loves to go on a picnic with myself and the kids on Saturday and don't complain about the ants and the flies. She wants to take a vacation with the family at least once a year. She wants me to go walking with her and talk as we walk, just private, quiet time. When Mark's list was finished, I said, you know what I'm going to suggest, don't you, Mark? Do them, right? Dr. Chapman, yes, that's right. Do one a week for the next 2 months. Where will you find the time? You'll make the time. You're a wise guy. You figured out a way to climb the corporate ladder. That means you have brains. You have the ability to plan your life and to include Andrea in your plans. I know Mark said, I can do this. And Mark, this does not have to diminish your goals at work. It just means that when you get to the top, Andrea and the children will be right there with you to enjoy that tremendous accomplishment. Mark said with a feeling, that's what I want more than anything. The years have come and gone. Andrea and Mark have had ups and downs, but the important thing is that they've done it all together. The children have left the nest and gone on to build their own lives married, and Mark and Andrea agree that these are their best years ever. Mark has become an avid symphony fan, and Andrea has made an unending list in her pad of things she appreciates about Mark. He never tires of hearing them because he loves words of affirmation. It isn't enough to just be in the same room with the person, with that special someone. A key ingredient is giving the person your quality time. Is not only just giving them time, it's also important to give them your focused attention, especially in this era of so many distractions. Cell phones, all types of buzzers and things flying, going off, alarms. When a father is sitting on the floor rolling a ball to his 2-year-old, his attention is not focused on the ball, his attention is focused on the child. But for that brief moment, however long it lasts, they're together, they're bonding. If, however, the father is talking on the phone while he rolls the ball, his attention is now diluted, lessened, diminished. Some husbands and wives think they're spending time together when in reality they're only living in close proximity, but they are not spending time together. They are in the same house at the same time, but they're not together. A wife who's texting while her husband tries to talk to her is not giving him quality time because he does not have her full attention. And that's a tremendous warning in this era of cell phones, and especially how we're addicted to them. Quality time does not mean that we have to spend our together moments gazing into each other's eyes. It means that we're doing something together and that we're giving our full attention to the other person while we're doing that activity together. The activity in which we're both engaged is incidental. That's not important. It's the fact that you're present and accounted for. The important thing emotionally is that we're spending focused time with each other. The activity is a vehicle that creates a sense of togetherness. The important thing about the father rolling the ball to his 2-year-old son is not the activity itself, but the emotions that are created between the father and the child when the father gives his son his undivided attention. Similarly, a husband and a wife going running together, if it's generally quality time, will focus not on the run, but on the fact that they're spending time together. What happens on that emotional level is what matters. It's the connection that they build. It's the kesher they create. Our spending time together in a common pursuit communicates that we care about each other and that we enjoy being with each other like we do things together. Like words of affirmation, the language of quality time also has many dialects. One of the most common dialects is that of quality conversation. By quality conversation, we mean sympathetic dialogue, where two people are sharing their experiences, thoughts, feelings, and desires in a friendly, uninterrupted way. Most people who complain that their spouse does not talk to them don't mean literally that they don't say a word. They mean that he or she seldom takes part in a sympathetic dialogue. And I'll explain what that means. If your spouse's primary love language is quality time, such dialogue is crucial to his or her emotional sense of being loved. Quality conversation is quite different from the first love language, which is words of affirmation. Words of affirmation focus on what we are saying, whereas quality conversation focuses on what we are hearing. If I'm sharing my love for you by means of quality time, and we're going to spend that time in conversation, it means I will focus on drawing you out, listening sympathetically, asking questions. Wow, when did that happen? How did you feel when that happened? You must have felt so hard or so bad. It means that we're plugged into the conversation and we're reacting interactively. I'm going to ask questions in quality conversation, not in a badgering manner, but with a genuine desire to understand your thoughts, your feelings, your desires. I met Patrick when he was 43, and he had been married for 17 years. I remember him because his first words were so dramatic. He sat in the chair in my office, and after briefly introducing himself, he leaned forward and said with great emotion, "Dr. Chapman, I've been a fool, a real fool." "What has led you to that conclusion?" I asked. "I've been married for 17 years, he said, and my wife has left me. Now I realize what a fool I've been." I repeated my original question. "In what way were you a fool? Tell me, Patrick, in what way were you a fool?" My wife would come home from work and tell me about the problems in her office. I would listen to her and then tell her what I thought she should do. I always gave her advice. I told her she had to confront the problem. Problems don't go away. You have to talk with the people involved or your supervisor. You have to deal with the problem, I would tell her. The next day she would come home from work and tell me about the same problems. I would ask her if she did what I suggested the day before. She would shake her head and say no. After 3 or 4 nights of that stuff, I would get upset. I'd get angry. I would tell her not to expect my sympathy from me if you're not willing to take the advice and execute my advice. She didn't have to live under that kind of stress and pressure. She could solve the problem if she would simply do what I told her. It hurt me to see her living under such stress because I knew she didn't have to. The next time she'd bring up the problem, I would say, "I don't want to hear about it. I told you what to do, you're not listening to me. I've told you 1,000 times. If you're not listening to my advice, then I don't want to hear what the problem is." I would withdraw and go about my business. Dr. Chapman, what a fool I was. What a fool I was. Now I realize that she didn't want my advice. She wanted my sympathy. She wanted me to feel her pain. She wanted me to listen. She wanted me to give her my undivided attention. to let her know that I could understand her hurt. I could understand her stress, that I could understand her pressure. She wanted to know that I loved her and that I was with her. She wanted to know that I was always be with her. She didn't want my advice. She just wanted to know that I understood her pain. But I never tried to understand her. I was too busy giving advice, and now she's left me and she's gone. Patrick's wife had been pleading, begging for quality conversation. Emotionally, she longed for Patrick to focus attention on her by listening to her pain and frustration. Patrick was not focusing on listening, but only on speaking. He listened only long enough to hear the problem and formulate a solution. He didn't listen long enough or well enough to hear her cry for support and understanding. Many of us, unfortunately, are like Patrick. We are trained to analyze problems. We are trained to create solutions. We forget that marriage is a relationship, not a project to be completed or a problem to be solved. A relationship calls for sympathetic listening with a view to understanding the other person's thoughts and feelings. We must be willing to give advice, but only when it's requested. And don't volunteer it. And never do it in a condescending manner. Most of us have little training in listening. We're far more efficient in thinking and in speaking. Learning to listen may be as difficult as learning a foreign language, but learn we must if we want to have a fantastic marriage, if we want to communicate love. That's especially true if your spouse's primary love language is quality time, and his or her dialect is quality conversation, which is just to be sympathetic and be a good listening ear. Fortunately, numerous books and articles have been written on developing the art of listening. Here are some practical tips on great listening skills. Maintain eye contact when your spouse is talking. I happen to have the privilege to train many people in dating conversation. And I watch their eyes as they speak with me as we go through a dry run of dating. And just today I had to point out to several of my clients, why are you looking at the ceiling? Why are you looking at the floor? You've got to be looking at me directly. So maintaining eye contact with when your spouse is talking is critical in great listening tips. That keeps your mind from wandering and communicates that he or she has your full attention. So make sure you have good eye contact. 2, don't listen to your spouse and do something else at the same time, because we all want to be able to be, able to do multitasking. Remember, quality time is giving someone your undivided attention. If you're doing something you cannot turn from immediately, tell the spouse the truth. I'm sorry that I have to listen to you. While I listen to you, I have to get something done, or making a copy by the copying machine. A positive approach might be, I know you're trying to talk to me and I'm interested, and I really do truly want to give you my full attention. I can't do that right now, but if you'll give me 10 minutes to finish this, I'll sit down and listen to you. Most spouses will respect such a request. Number 3, listen for feelings. Ask yourself, what emotion is my spouse experiencing right now? When you think you have the answer, confirm it. For example, it sounds like to me like you're feeling disappointment because I forgot to do X with you. That gives the person the chance to clarify their feelings. It also communicates that you are listening intently to what they're saying. Observe body language is number 4. Clenched fists, trembling hands, tears, furrowed eyebrows, and eye movements may give you clues as to what the other person is feeling. Sometimes body language speaks one message while words speak another. Ask for clarification to make sure you know what you're really thinking and feeling. 5, refuse to interrupt. Research has indicated that the average person listens for only 17 seconds before interrupting and interjecting their own ideas. If I give you my undivided attention while you're talking, I'll refrain from defending myself or hurling accusation back at you or stating my position in a dogmatic fashion. My goal is to discover your thoughts and discover your feelings. My objective is not to defend myself or set you straight. It's simply to try to understand you. And that's what you're trying to show the other person, your spouse or the significant person in your life, right? So do not interrupt. Next, let's learn how to talk. Quality conversation requires not only sympathetic listening, but also self-revelation. When a person says, or when a wife says, I wish my husband would talk, I never know what he's thinking or feeling, she's pleading for intimacy. She wants him to let her into his life. She wants him to open a window to his soul. She wants to feel close to him. But how can she feel close to someone who she doesn't know? In order for her to feel loved, he must learn to reveal himself. He's got to become vulnerable. If her primary love language is quality time, and her dialect is quality conversation, her emotional love tank will never be filled until he tells her his intimate or inner thoughts and feelings. Self-revelation does not come easy for most of us. We may have grown up in homes where expressing your thoughts and feelings was not encouraged, rather it could have been squelched. To request a toy was to receive a lecture on how bad family finances were. Now we can't afford it right now. The child went away feeling guilty for even having the desire to want that toy, and he quickly learned not to express his desires. When he expressed anger, the parents responded with harsh and condemning words. Thus the child learned that expressing angry feelings is not appropriate either. If the child was made to feel guilty for expressing disappointment and not being able to go to the store with his father, he learned to hold his disappointment inside. By the time we reach adulthood, many of us have learned to deny our feelings. We're no longer in touch with our emotional selves because we've had this dysfunctionality when we were children. A wife says to her husband, "How did you feel about what Steve did?" And the husband responds, "I think he was wrong. He should have had done," but he's not telling her his feelings. He's only voicing his thoughts. Perhaps he has reason to feel angry or disappointed, but he's lived so long in the world of thought that he does not know how to acknowledge or flush out his feelings. When he decides to learn a language of quality conversation, it'd be like learning a foreign language. The place to begin is by getting in touch with your feelings, becoming aware that you're an emotional creature in spite of the fact that you've been in denial and denying that part of your life. If you need to learn the language of quality conversation, begin by noting the emotions you feel away from home. Carry a small notepad and keep it with you daily. Excuse me. 3 times a day, ask yourself, what emotions have I felt in the last 3 hours? What did I feel on the way to work when the driver behind me was riding my bumper? What did I feel when I stopped at the gas station and the automatic pump did not shut off and the side of the car was covered in gas? What did I feel when I got to the office and found that the project that I was working on had to be completed in 3 days when I thought I was given another 2 weeks? Write down your feelings in the notepad and a word or two to help you remember the event corresponding to the feeling. Your list may look like this. Event, for example, there was someone following me, tailgater, and my feelings were angry. Event, gas station, feelings, very upset because the gas went all over the side of the car. Event, work project was due, which I thought was 2 weeks, and now I just realized, or I was told I only have 3 days. Feelings, frustrated and anxious. Do that exercise 3 times a day until you develop an awareness of your emotional nature. Using your notepad, communicate your emotions and the events briefly with your spouse as many days as possible. In a few weeks, you'll become comfortable expressing your emotions with him or with her. And eventually, you'll feel comfortable discussing your emotions towards your spouse, the children, and events that occur in the home. The key is to pull those emotions out and be able to verbalize them. Remember, emotions are not good, they're not bad. They're simply our psychological responses to the events of our life. Based on our thoughts and emotions, we eventually make decisions. When the tailgater was following you on the highway and you felt angry because he was constantly behind you, perhaps you had these thoughts. I wish he would lay off. I wish he would pass me. I'd press the accelerator and leave him in the twilight. I should slam on my brakes and let his insurance company buy me a new car. Or maybe I'll pull off the road and let him pass. Eventually, you made some decision, or the other driver backed off, turned, passed you, and you arrived safely at work. In each of life's events, we have emotions, we have thoughts, we have desires. Eventually, and actions lead to them. The expression of that process is called self-revelation. If you choose to learn the love dialect of quality conversation, that's the learning road you must follow, which is to get in touch with your emotions, be able to express them. Not every one of us is in touch with our emotions, but when it comes to talking, all of us are affected by our personality. We've observed 2 basic personality types. The first personality type we're going to call the Dead Sea, and the second personality type we're going to call the Babbling Brook. Let's talk about the Dead Sea. In the little nation of Israel, the Sea of Galilee flows by way of the Jordan River into the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea goes nowhere. It receives, but it doesn't give. The Dead Sea takes in, but it doesn't give out anything. This personality type receives experiences, emotions, and thoughts throughout the day. They have a large reservoir where they store information, and they're perfectly happy not to talk. They just listen and they take in, but they don't express out. That's the personality of the Dead Sea. If you say to a Dead Sea personality, "What's wrong? Why aren't you talking tonight?" They'll probably answer, "Oh, nothing's wrong. What makes you think something's wrong?" And that response is perfectly honest. That person is content not to talk. They could drive from Chicago to Detroit and never say a word and be perfectly happy. On the other extreme of the personality profile is the babbling brook. For this personality, whatever enters into the eye gate or the ear gate comes out the mouth gate, and there are seldom 60 seconds between the two. That person just babbles and babbles and babbles, and we know people like that, just like we know Dead Seas. Whatever they see, whatever they hear, whatever they encounter, they talk about it. In fact, if no one is at home to talk to, they'll call someone and start to chat or get it going. Do you know what I saw? They'll call a friend and ask, do you know what I heard? If they can't get someone on the phone, they may talk to themselves because they have no reservoir. Many times a Dead Sea marries a babbling brook, and it's a very attractive match because it's a great combination. As my friend Rabbi Brody would say when it comes to shidduchim, we never want to pair up two pussycats and we never want to pair up two tigers. We'd like to see a pussycat and a tiger. It's a great match. If you are a Dead Sea and you're dating a babbling brook, you will have a wonderful evening, a great date. You don't have to think, how will I get the conversation started tonight? How will I keep the conversation flowing? In fact, you don't have to think at all. All you have to do is nod your head and say, be a good listener, and you'll fill up the whole evening. The babbling brook will fill up the whole evening, and you'll go home saying, what a wonderful person. On the other hand, if you're a babbling brook and you date a Dead Sea, you'll have an equally wonderful evening because Dead Seas are the world's best listeners. You will babble for hours and hours and hours. They'll listen intently to you and you'll go home saying, what a wonderful person. You attract each other. But 5 years after marriage, a babbling brook wakes up one morning and says, we've been married 5 years and I don't know him. The Dead Sea is saying, I know her too well too. I wish she would stop the flow and give me a break. The good news is that the Dead Seas can learn to talk and the babbling brooks can learn to listen. Everything is trainable, as I tell my clients. We're all influenced by our personality, but we're not controlled by our personality. Again, we are influenced by our personality, but we're not controlled by it. One way to learn new patterns is to establish a daily sharing time in which each of you will talk about 3 things that happened to you that day and how you feel about them. We call that the minimum daily requirement for a healthy marriage. If you will start with the daily minimum, in a few weeks or months, you may find quality conversation flowing more freely than you thought. In addition to the basic love language of quality time, or giving your spouse your undivided attention, another dialect of quality time called quality activities. At a recent marriage seminar, I asked couples to complete the following sentence. I feel most loved by my husband or wife when we do the following. Here is the response of 29-year-old husband who's been married for 8 years. I feel most loved by my wife when we do things together, things like that I like to do and things that she likes to do. We talk more. It sort of feels like we're dating again. That is a typical response of the individuals whose primary love language is quality time. The emphasis is on being together, doing things together, giving each other undivided attention. Quality activities may include anything which one or both of you have an interest in. The emphasis is not on what you're doing, but on why you're doing it. The purpose is to experience something together, like a paint night together, bowling together, board night together, and walk away from it feeling like he cares about me, she cares about me. They're willing to do something with me that I enjoy, and they did it with positive attitude. That is love, and for some people, it's love's loudest voice. One of Emily's favorite pastimes is browsing in used bookstores. I love this, to disappear into the stacks and see what treasures I can find, she says. Husband Jeff, less of an avid reader, has learned to share these experiences with Emily and even point out books that she may enjoy. Emily, for her part, has learned to compromise and not force Jeff to spend hours in the stacks. As a result, Jeff proudly says, I vowed early on that if there was a book Emily wanted, I would buy it for her. Jeff may never become a bookworm, but he has become proficient at loving Emily because he's become proficient at understanding what makes her tick. Quality activities may include putting in a garden, visiting historic sites, birding, going out to a concert, working out together, or having another couple over for dinner. The activities are limited only by your interest and willingness to try new experiences. The essential ingredients in a quality activity are, number 1, at least one of you wants to do it. Number 2, the other person is willing to want to do it. 3, both of you know why you're doing it, to express love and be together. One of the byproducts of quality activities is that they provide a memory bank from which to draw on in the years ahead. You'll remember them, you'll talk about them nostalgically years later. Fortunate is the couple who remember a foggy early morning stroll along the coast, the spring they put in the prairie garden, the day they revisited their childhood neighborhood, the night they attended their first Major League Baseball game together, the one and only time they went skiing together and he broke his leg, the quiet times of working side by side at night in their home office, and oh yes, the awe of standing beneath the waterfall after a 2-mile hike. They can almost feel the mist as they remember that experience. Those are memories of love, especially for the person whose primary love language is quality time. And where do we find time for such activities? Especially if both of us have occasions outside the home. We make time. Just as we make time for lunch and dinner, we make time to be together. And why do we do that? Because it's just as essential to our marriage as meals are essential to our health and survival. Is it difficult? Does it take careful planning? Yes, it does. Does it mean that we have to give up some individual activities? Perhaps. Does it mean we do some things we don't particularly enjoy? Certainly. Take the case of Jeff and Emily. Jeff is not such an avid reader, but he did it for Emily to go browsing in used bookstores. Is it worth it? Without a doubt. What's in it for me? The pleasure of living with a spouse who feels loved and knowing that I've learned to speak his or her love language fluently. A personal word of thanks to our first couple, Mark and Andrea, who taught us the value of love language. Number 1, words of affirmation, and love language number 2, quality time. Now it's on to Chicago, and we're going to go to love language number 3. But now, here we go. So, let's just some tips on improving quality time. Some couples, number 1, are together a lot more than others. If that's the case for you, don't try to make all your time together quality time. Designate specific times and places for being together. Number 2, another a strategy to be able to perform quality time together and improve it. Ask your spouse for a list of activities that he or she would like to do. Don't assume you know. See what's on their mind. Make plans to do one of them each month for the next 5 months. If money's an issue, space the freebies between the ones you can afford. Number 3, to improve quality time. Exercise to improve quality time. One way to share quality time at a distance is to include your spouse in your day as it's happening. Send a photo of something you saw on your walk to the office, or relay a funny incident that happened in a meeting at work. One woman said, my husband sent me a photo of him, my daughter and the dog sitting on our front porch. I was at work and it made me feel like I was hanging out with them. I was part of their life. Number 4, activity to improve quality time. Think of an activity your spouse enjoys, but which brings little pleasure to you, such as football or crafting or nature photography. Tell your spouse that you're trying to broaden your horizons and would like to join them in this activity sometime this month. Set a date and give your best effort. And lastly, number 5, plan a weekend getaway and just for the two of you sometime within the next 6 months. Be sure it's a weekend when you won't have to be in touch with the office or have a family commitment. Focus on relaxing together, doing what one or both of you enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me tonight as we learned how to improve and how to execute quality time, quality conversation, quality activities. Join us next week as we continue with the next love language, which is going to be gift giving. What does that mean and how do we perform that for the person whose love language is receiving gifts? Have a wonderful evening. And again, if you need any help with dating or shalom bayis, or want to get matched up, or you want me to help you evaluate a relationship you're in, or you'd like a copy of the PDF of dating questions, please feel free to reach out to me at 305-206-1916. Have a wonderful week.